In a small, bustling neighborhood, where the scent of roasted corn mixed with the dust of unpaved streets, 18-year-old Rina walked home, her head low, her thoughts heavy. Every day felt the same. Her father, a hard-working street vendor, barely making enough to put food on the table. She had dreams, but dreams didn't pay rent. Dreams didn't change the fact that poverty was all she had ever known. As she made her way past the small market stalls, something caught her attention. The rhythmic tapping of a hammer, the soft scraping of sandpaper. She turned her head and saw an elderly woman, her hands steady and strong, repairing an old dining table with incredible precision. Mrs. Juna, the neighborhood carpenter, worked as if she were carving something greater than just wood, as if she were shaping a future only she could see. Rina stopped, mesmerized. The way the old woman moved, the way she handled the tools, it was almost beautiful. For a moment, she forgot about her worries. But what was the point? She had nothing. No money, no opportunity, no way out. Noticing her gaze, Mrs. Juna looked up and smiled. "Curious? Young one?" she asked, her voice warm yet knowing. Embarrassed, Rina shook her head, but something inside her pushed her forward. "You work so skillfully," Rina admitted, stepping closer. "Years of practice," Mrs. Juna chuckled, running a hand over the wood. "Each dent, each scratch tells a story, just like people." Rina hesitated before speaking. "But what's the point? We're all stuck here. No matter how hard we work, we stay poor." Mrs. Juna studied her for a moment, then gestured to an old wooden stool beside her. Rina sat, and the old woman began her story. She had once been just like Rina, poor, alone, abandoned with nothing but a few tools and her bare hands. But instead of waiting for help, she chose to learn, to build, to create. Because, she said, poverty isn't just about a lack of money. It's about a lack of skills, a lack of opportunity, a lack of belief in oneself. Then, she placed a wooden block in front of Rina and handed her a chisel. Poverty isn't permanent. It's a cycle, and cycles can be broken. The question is, do you want to learn how? Rina hesitated, staring at the wood. What difference would this make? And yet, something inside her whispered, try. The first few days were frustrating. Rina's hands were clumsy, her lines uneven. She would get angry, throw down the chisel, ready to quit. But Mrs. Juna would simply hand her another piece of wood and say, try again. And so she did, day after day. With each mistake, she learned. With each lesson, she grew. Weeks passed, and soon her hands became steadier. She fixed an old chair, then a broken shelf. And one day, a neighbor approached her, holding a broken stool. "Can you fix this? I'll pay you." Rina's heart pounded. Someone was willing to pay her for this? For something she had built with her own hands? That day, she earned her first payment. It wasn't much, but to her, it was proof. Proof that she wasn't stuck. Proof that she could create her own future. And something incredible happened. As she worked, children gathered around, watching her carve, fascinated. One little boy, his clothes tattered, his eyes filled with quiet hope, hesitated before asking, Can I learn too?" And in that moment, Rina realized this wasn't just about her anymore. Months turned into years. What started as a lesson between an old carpenter and a lost girl became something much bigger. Rina taught others, just as she had been taught. The small workshop that once held only broken furniture now held dreams, skills, and a future for those who had once felt hopeless. And then, one day, standing in front of a crowd of young dreamers at a seminar, Rina smiled. She had once thought that escaping poverty was impossible, but now she knew better. Years ago, I believed I had no future, that poverty was my fate. But I learned something powerful. Opportunities don't always come to us. Sometimes we have to create them. Just like a carpenter turns broken wood into something new, we can shape our own future. The audience listened, hanging on to every word. And as she spoke, she saw that same spark in their eyes. The same spark that once led her to pick up that chisel and carve out a new life for herself. Because poverty isn't just about money. It's about knowledge. It's about skill. It's about believing that you can build something better. And sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to take the first step.